Hey, ladies and gentlemen. So we are working on Australia. Today, we're going to be working on the country study. So I have the country study and the read doc up, and we're going to kind of go through again, a little more in depth on this country study. So the first thing we're going to look at is the name of the country. We were talking about Australia, right? And so then we come down here to the continent. This one should be pretty easy because Australia is not only a country, it is also a continent. So it will be this Australia/Oceania section here that you're going to mark up for that. So again, we're not worried about the world map because we can't really do anything there. Country map and flag country, we're just going to go to insert, image, search the web, and we're going to search the web for a Australia map, and we're going to search the web for an Australia flag. All right. So again, with the government type, current leader, population, all that stuff is going to come directly from here. I'm not going to focus a lot on it, but if you hold Control F, you can look up the government and search until you find the section. There we go, on government. All right, so here we go. It says Australia gained its independence from the Federation of UK Colonies on January 1st, 1901. Australia has a federal parliamentary democracy under a constitutional monarchy. So this section here, federal parliamentary democracy under a constitutional monarchy, that is what you're going to go for government type. The current leader, right here, Prime Minister Scott Morrison, right? So that would be the person that you would put here. Now for population, area, population density, all this stuff here, this is just going to come from the various charts that show up throughout, like you have your population information here and stuff like that. You may have some of the information you need here. This is a good resource. So your population 2020 is 25,499,000. Population density is right here. So you're just going to search through. I'm not going to search through all these for you, but you're going to search through for this. And remember, if you're looking for the gross domestic product or GDP, and you can't find it, use the search function, right? Because this helps narrow down where it is you're supposed to be at. So that is all we're going to talk about that. All right, now climate and ecosystem. Let's look for climate. There we go, environment. All right, so it says, since Australia is located in the southern hemisphere, the seasons are opposite of what we are used to. So it means when it's winter here, it is summer there. And when it is summer there, or summer here, it is winter there. The southern areas of Australia are generally more temperate to warm, with summer daytime temperatures usually between 77 and 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and winter temperatures between 41 degrees and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The Tasmanian Mountains and the Australian Alps in the southeast of Australia have a typical mountain climate. The winter can be very harsh there, and the highest peaks are usually covered by snow year-round. Another extreme, but completely different, are the conditions in the desert and bush, or the area known as the outback. Areas in central Australia. The temperature sometimes reaches 122 degrees Fahrenheit and more, and rainfall may not fall for years in these areas. 80% of the land receives less than 24 inches of rain annually, and 50% has around 12 inches or less. As a whole, the annual rainfall averages is 16%. All right, so what that means is that your climate is different depending on where you are. You can see down here, like the picture, you have desert is kind of this maroon-ish color, right? So you have desert here, and this is a tropical area. The other one here, and let me blow up this image real quick so we can see better. Oh man, okay. All right, so tropical climates, you have this is semi-arid. This up here is grasslands. You have subtropical climates. You have humid subtropical, and then this color right here is desert, and then the blue is temperate. All right. So those are the different climates that are found in Australia, but there's not very much temperate. Like if you look, the only temperate you find is this one little piece right down here, right? But we have humid subtropical around these areas, like around the coast. And then we have grassland up in the northern section. So when you talk about the climate, you can talk about how they have different ones. You can kind of like talk about, they have this, 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 and this. So you can kind of give me a list, or you can focus on just one or two that are there and talk about those a little more in depth. All right. So the next thing is ecosystems. All right. So that is going to be here. Like you're going to take the environmental issues and kind of talk about how that's going to affect the ecosystem. So you have to make some connections here. So let's look at this. The major environmental issues in Australia are deforestation, agricultural clearing, overgrazing, overfishing, introduction of exotic species, pollution, and infrastructure development. All right, so that's quite a list of things going on in Australia. Some are probably more destructive than others, but all of these are issues that are considered to be major. So they're having a pretty big impact on the environment and the ecosystem. Say economy. So when forests are cut, the salinity of the soil can greatly increase. As a result, saline water draining from such areas can affect downstream or downslope water quality. All right, so what they're saying is like right here, where you have them cutting down like all these trees, this area ends up being more saline, meaning there's more salt in the ground. And then whenever the rains finally do come, well, this water has to go somewhere. And salt dissolves in water. So the salt that is here ends up dissolving in the water. And then wherever the water goes, that ends up increasing the salt content of the water. Now, as a rule, things that live in water are usually pretty sensitive to changes in the water. So by increasing the salt content of the water, you may be making it harder for certain animals to live in that area, and you may actually just be killing off certain certain animals or plants that do live in that area. So this is kind of a big issue. Let's see. It is estimated that around 7% of the agricultural area of Western Australia is suffering from this problem following deforestation. Moreover, studies in Australia's wet tropics show that soils have a limited capacity to recover from deforestation. So remember that these plants, like when plants grow in soil, they have to use minerals from that soil to grow. So they take those minerals out. When you cut down the plants, if no minerals are added back into the ground, when the plants go back to grow back in, they may not have enough minerals to grow properly. So that's what this is talking about, is that in the tropic area, the soil they're showing doesn't have like an overabundance of minerals. So when you go and cut down all the trees, even if you plant more trees to grow back, they may not be able to, because there just may not be enough food for those trees to do so. Because of clearing activities for agricultural land, around 13% of Australia's original vegetation has been removed since European settlement. Overgrazing is one of the main pressures on biodiversity in Australia. Grazing and various agriculture improvement strategies have modified vast areas of grassland and open grassy woodlands. In temperate ecosystems, less than 2% of the original grassland remains. So, that means 98% of the grassland has been destroyed. The Australian, land and stuff, like it's, used for, sheep, I think cattle, and things like that. The kangaroos also eat grass. And because, as humans, when we go into an area, we tend to kill off all the predators that could possibly hurt us. Well, those predators also used to hunt the kangaroos. Like kangaroos are kind of like white-tailed deer here in the United States. Because we've killed off all the wolves and all the bears, the white-tailed deer population has exploded. Their natural predators just disappeared. There's nothing left to kill them except for us, and we don't kill enough of them. So their population exploded. Same sort of thing happens with the kangaroos. If you go and you kill off all the dingoes and whatever else it is that eats kangaroos, well, then the kangaroos don't have predators and they just breed without dying, and their numbers grow huge. Well, because they're grazing animals, that also messes up the ecosystem. Overfishing has already decreased part of Australia's fish stocks to dangerously low levels. In 2005, 17 of 82 species that were assessed in Australian waters were classified as overfished. Illegal fishing places further pressure on some species, with Patagonian toothfish in the Southern Ocean and shark for their friends in Northern Australia waters being the worst affected. So they're saying that, like, whenever they go out to fish, and this is happening all over the world, it's not just Australia. We as humans have become so good at catching fish that we're literally fishing out the oceans. Our populations keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we keep taking and taking and taking, and we get better at taking, to the point where we're literally like knocking out whole species of animals. So that's what they're saying here, is that as of 2005, 17 of 82 species were classified overfished. That is, it's about a quarter. So a quarter of the species that they fish for are considered to be overfished. Not only that, but businesses have certain limits that they're allowed to take. Like they may be only able to take like 2 tons of a certain fish, or a certain number, or they may only be able to fish in a small window of time. And that those are set to help protect those species so that we don't overfish them. But some people fish illegally, and that puts even more pressure on the fish. And then the powers that be have to adjust the limits or the fishing times for the legal fishermen because of the illegal ones. All right, it's estimated that Australia gains around 20 new pests or diseases each year. Some well-known examples include cane toads, rabbits, willows, and more recently, black-striped mussels and red fire ants. Historically, feral cats, foxes, and rabbits have been a cause of local extinctions and significant reductions in range for native species through a combination of habitat modification and predation. They are a major ongoing problem. All right. Intensive agriculture is affecting Australia's coasts and ocean, particularly estuaries and environments near the shore. Modeling predictions estimate each year almost 19,000 tons of phosphorus and 141,000 tons of nitrogen are discharged to rivers flowing to the coast. All right, I'm not 100% certain, but I think these two things, phosphorus and nitrogen, are used in fertilizers. So I'm pretty sure that this is because of farmers fertilizing their fields. Then, the rain comes and it washes that fertilizer away, or it takes it down into, the underwater areas or underground water areas. And then that goes, is discharged into the ocean where, most water is discharged. So this is a huge number. Right. So, phosphorus and nitrogen exist in nature, but not in the concentrations that you find, because of human intervention. So, a little bit of this isn't going to matter much. But when you start talking about 19,000 or 141,000 tons, that's huge. All right. So that was a lot for ecosystem, but you just pick a few things and talk about those. Like there's a lot of stuff going on, so there should be a lot of opportunities. How are people using the land or depending on the environment? Well, we talked about that. What are people doing, that's causing, it's actually in the environmental issues, right? That they're doing things to the land. What natural resources are there? So there's a section, let's see, Control F. Natural. Actually, hold on. It wouldn't be natural. It'd just be resources. There we go. Right. So this is a great tool. Like I said, So here's all your resources, right? Silver, gold, copper, nickel, lead, right? So just look at this map and kind of, tell me something about it, right? So like all on the eastern coast, they have a lot of coal, right? And then on the western coast, they have a lot of iron, right? So these are the things that you're going to be talking about whenever you're talking about natural resources. How did people change the land? We talked about that. What are they doing to the forest? What are they, doing to? And I guess it's not really the land, but I would also accept like if you talked about the overfishing and stuff, how they're affecting the ecosystem in the water around Australia. How human activity affects or is influenced by the Earth's surface. So this you can talk about the climate section where we were talking about like the outback and how it's like the desert and all this. You can also talk about how they're cutting down trees and it's increasing the salinity and things like that. But this would be in those sections where you're talking about climate, resources, and things like that. So those are just a few things you can put. There's other stuff that you can put here, but you're just looking for anything where humans are making kind of an impact on the earth, or the earth makes it to where humans have to work around it. If they have to dig through a mountain kind of thing, that's influencing human activity. So that would fall under this category as well, right? So all this stuff here, just by reading that one section, the one section on climate, a lot of this can be answered just by that one section. All right. And there are other places you can find this in the read. Like I said, resources, you're going to talk about, the natural resources here. I'm sure that there's some parts in the resources where they talk about what they had to do, like mining and things of that nature that could go in this section. And then same thing here, if they talk about how mining has an effect on stuff, well, you could talk about that here. So you have a lot of options for these. How is society in the country structured? Oops, wrong one. All right, so this would just be the section where we would go and we would look for people. So you have the original groups was the Aboriginals. The British colonized Australia in 1788. There were 500 different indigenous groups in that area of Australia, but they didn't last very long. Let's see. Just during the time of colonization, 60% of the indigenous population ended up dying because of conflict with the settlers and disease that the settlers brought. Right here by the late 1800s, the majority of people who were born in Australia are British or Irish descent. Let's see here. All right, so the British population continues to be the majority, so it's still majority British, with 67%. And then here are the other percentage breakdown of ethnicities. You're probably going to want to look for religion, and then we're going to want to look at culture. All right, so if we're trying to figure out how society is structured, it's not just kind of found in one place, right? So you need to read the section on religion. Let's look. Most of religion is considered other, all right? Let's see what it says here. All right. So, although there is no established church or religion, the vast majority of the population, 61%, identifies with one of the branches of Christianity. So, 61% of the population is somewhat Christian, of one flavor or another. 25% is Roman Catholic. 18.7% are just considered Christian. 17% are Anglican Christian. So a large portion of your population are Christian. Atheists and agnostics make up 22%. All All right, so keep that in mind when you're talking about society being structured. So if 60 some odd percent of your society is, one religion, that's going to have kind of a big impact on the structure of your society, right? Your cultural norms and things are going to be more aligned with this religion. Just like in Saudi Arabia, the cultural norms and things are more aligned with Islam than they would be with other religions. So that is one section that we're looking at. And then culture, we don't want the colony stuff. We want to look at kind of the new stuff. So let's see. Interesting. So all they have for the cultural stuff is talking about kind of like the original culture and how it changed, as 18th century and things of that nature. And that's not really what we're looking for this particular section. I guess you could talk about it a little bit there if you wanted to, but it's not the main focus. So you're looking more for how everything is structured, as far as like the total of society, and you're looking for the newer stuff rather than the old stuff. So the other section that you can look at is the government. So they have an executive branch, a legislative and judicial, very similar to what we have in the United States. The executive branch is run by the chief of state, Queen Elizabeth II, because remember, this is still connected in some way to Britain. It is represented by Governor David Hurley, the head of government, Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and their cabinet. Their legislative branch or bicameral federal parliament is divided into a Senate and House of Representatives. In their judicial branch, there is a Supreme Court in each of the 6 states and 2 territories. And there are several parties in Australia, and this is their political party. So you don't really have to worry about that. So we talked a little bit about how they are set up, with their government, and we talked a little bit about how they're set up with their religion. And like I said, the culture section I thought would have more information about like current culture, but it just seems like this section is actually talking about kind of the Aborigines culture and things of that nature. And immigrants and stuff from like, the pretty distant past. So that's not really what we're looking at. So here you're going to want to talk about Christianity and its influence on the structure, and then the government and how it is structured. So Australia is very similar, I would say, to America in kind of their country structure, both from a political standpoint and a religious standpoint. It's not exactly the same. It's not like super similar. We are obviously 2 very different countries, but compared to other countries, I think it's probably fairly close if you compare us to them, as instead of comparing us to Saudi Arabia. We're going to be much closer to Australia than we are to Saudi Arabia. Major religious beliefs, we just went over that, right? So that's going to be the religion section. You're just going to break it down, give me like the top 3 or so religious beliefs. How has the country's history helped shape the geography? So that's going to be going back to that section where we were talking about like how they cut down, like, what was it, like 13% of the vegetation, right here. Because of clearing activities for agricultural land, around 13% of Australia's vegetation has been removed since European settlement. So you can talk about that. You can talk about them, cutting down the trees. You can talk about the grassland, how there's only 2% of it remaining. So that's going to go there because that is physical geography. Fun facts, that's going to be on you. After you read the read doc, what do you think that you saw that you thought was real interesting, right? And then the next one is other things to remember. So this would be things that you think are important that they didn't really go over, right? And these 4 can be anything, but you got to have them, all right? That just proves to me that you read the read doc. And you're not just, searching through to find the answers. I know that seems like the easiest way to do it is just come here and read this and start finding answers. But when you do that, you don't really understand what's going on. You're just getting bits and pieces. And so whenever it comes to time to answer like questions that show you understand things, you don't have that because you don't understand things because you didn't read the whole thing. So make sure that you're reading the read doc before you're doing these activities. Current events, of course, are going to be down here at the bottom, just like all the other read docs. If you go all the way down, down. Right. So here are your kind of current events, from like 93 to 2017. Like these, I would consider kind of current events. So you can read this too. They'll have, some stuff there. So this is where you're going to find your current event stuff. All right. So hopefully that helped. If not, if you still need some assistance, please shoot me an email.